Good afternoon, everybody. This is Diane Gilson with Info Plus Accounting, and we're so pleased to have you here today for our discussion about QuickBooks plus Lien Waivers IO, how you're going to get better job cost numbers through QuickBooks plus easier, faster lien waivers and payments. So I'm going to ask folks, why don't you let me know where you're from in your chat or question screen, whatever you find there. Just kind of let us know where you're coming from. Let's see. And people are saying, are there any handouts? So the answer is, while you're filling those things in, yes, we're going to have a set of the slides, and we'll get those emailed out to everybody who attends after we're done with the presentation. It may take us 24 to 48 hours to get all those through to you, but we will get those. Also, people are going to say, are there recordings? I can anticipate that. And the answer is yes, we are recording this. And we're planning on releasing that recording a week from now. That's the plan right now. And so you will also be getting a copy of the recording. So if you have to duck out, you don't have to worry about it. So I'm just looking at a lot of these. Oh, we've got people from all over the country. I'm seeing Florida, California, Wisconsin, more Florida, Illinois, Ohio, Virginia, North Dakota. So you guys are coming from all over the place. So thanks for being here. And we're going to do our best to get through quite a bit of information fairly quickly. So as I move forward, I want to introduce you to Luis Trejo. Luis is the Chief Revenue Officer and co-founder of LienWaivers.io. He's a former controller, Midwest residential and commercial builder. So while he was there, he did some very unique things that you're going to be able to share in today. And his background is a CPA. He's on tax strategy and planning, auditing and accounting, banking and finance, and he is been a process optimizer. That's pretty interesting. So I also want to say before I welcome Luis is that he was a fabulous presenter in a project that we called the Construction Industry Success Summit. We had 20 different consultants from all over the construction industry talk about different things that could be helpful for people in the industry. He did a great job. So, welcome, Luis. It's great to be able to talk to you again.
Yeah, good morning, Diane. It's great to be a part of
So,
this.
what's a process optimizer, Luis?
I'm always looking for how to make any process better than it already is, and how do you bring technology into that space to leverage technology for process optimization. So it's just something that I kind of look for in any role that I take.
Okay, so I guess I'll go ahead and introduce myself. It's always good to know who you're listening to. My background is I've been a consultant, trainer, speaker, been an author, and I've developed some of my own products. And of course, lots of accounting background. I'll let you guys read about that. But the major thing is that actually I'm in my 23rd year now of working with business owners and accounting staff to help develop job cost and management accounting systems in QuickBooks.
And I also will add to that, Diane, when we were forming our company, we were looking around the industry to find people who were QuickBooks experts, and your name kept coming up over and over again. So,
I appreciate hearing that. So, yep, we work hard here to help make sure that folks in the construction industry can do the kinds of things they want to. So, thank you. So today, the reason we're teaming up, okay, is business owners and managers need to see very specific QuickBooks reports. So the idea is so that they can effectively monitor and manage exactly what's happening on their jobs and in their company on a day-to-day basis. What we refer to this as often is management accounting. The idea is to have numbers that you can use internally, not waiting until the next April or September to find out really what's going on in your company when your taxes get filed. And then the other thing is that as I've worked with people, the next stage, I mean, I'm going to be talking to you about some of the job costing pieces on the front end in your management accounting system, but we're going to move on, and Luis is going to be talking about how once everything's in the system and recorded, how you can quickly and efficiently and securely deal with, there's some legalities called lien waivers. Okay, there's paper flow, and there's that whole processing cycle, as well as getting vendors paid and or getting paid if you're a vendor. And so Luis is going to be talking about software that's going to help tie all of that together and keep things moving so that you have better cash flow. So it's really kind of a blend of, getting the information in and having it give you good information, as well as keeping the cash flowing and making it so the paperwork doesn't bog you down. And I will mention ahead of time that I've had people ask me a number of times, well, will QuickBooks handle lien waivers? Unfortunately, on its own, it doesn't. But we're going to have some really cool things for you here today. Okay, so the part that I'm going to be dealing with is what's the value of job costing and estimate versus actual job cost reports. What are they? What would they look like? Why are they so important? And then, of course, that's beginning with the end in mind. That's what we want on the tail end. And the thing is, we want to also say, how do we get there? Now, the way we get there is by using items in QuickBooks, and I'll show you what they are, how they work, and then the role that purchase orders. A lot of people think of purchase orders as kind of a dirty word. Okay, but I'm going to show you something very cool that takes it out of the dirty word category and turns it into ways that you can get speed, accuracy, and control at a much higher level when you decide to use purchase orders. So we'll get there. Okay, so beginning with the end in mind, our estimate versus actual detail reports. This is what we want from a management accounting standpoint when it comes to controlling your jobs. So we need to know which of our jobs are making money, which jobs are losing money, or maybe they're not losing, but they're just not doing as well as they should. And we need to be able to, as we go through the process, understand and see the numbers. We don't want to wait until we're all done with a job to find out that there were certain areas that had spun out of control and we didn't know about it. So what we want to do is manage by exception. We want to be able to see what was our estimate, what was our actual, and what was our dollar difference. So if you look on the screen on the left hand side, you're going to see those job stage details on the left, and then you're going to see columns, two different sets of three columns. On the left, the estimated cost, the actual cost, and then your dollar difference on the cost side. On the revenue side, there are a lot of different ways we can look at revenue. Maybe it's a fixed price job, maybe it's time and materials. The revenue side is going to look a little different, or maybe it's cost plus. It's going to look a little different depending upon how you choose to invoice your customer. But nevertheless, that concept of seeing estimated and actual and dollar difference is really important. Okay, so why seeing those so important? I started to touch on it. So first of all, monitoring your income and costs as your jobs are underway. Also, when you're doing that, you're in a position then that you can take corrective action as the jobs progress. You don't wait until after the game is over to, well, you can take some corrective action after the game is over in anticipation of the next game, but it's a whole lot better to be able to stay on top of it as your game or your job is progressing. So after the fact, you can use those for continual improvement. So monitoring while it's happening and after the fact, what went right? How do we build on the good stuff? What went wrong? And how do we avoid repeating those problems? That's really the definition of control or controls. Accounting controls basically says, how do we keep the wrong things from happening? Okay. And how do we make sure the right things are happening? What do we do with that? We can provide feedback to our team members, either positive feedback, sometimes negative, and feedback to our estimators. Were our estimators on target? Let them know how they did. The idea is then, of course, to use your results to manage and control your company focus, direction, and profitability. Once you know what different types of jobs are doing for you, some of them you may say, oh, gee, we do a great job on decks, but we're not doing so well on kitchens if you were a remodeler, for example, or one particular model is doing better than the other for us. Knowledge at that level can help you change the direction your company's going in. So how does that work in QuickBooks? So you're seeing here an estimate picture of an estimate in QuickBooks, and you'll see at the top your customer name or the job. And then in QuickBooks, we need to use items. Okay, all those detailed job phases and so on, we're going to drop those into an estimate. And what we want to see then is our estimated cost. If there's markup on a line by line basis, we would see that. If you kind of look over to the right side of the screen, I'll move my mouse here. So here's where we would put our cost. If you're marking up line by line, it would go here, and here would be your price. Now, if you are doing a fixed price job, you would enter your price a little differently. Okay, I can't train you everything I know about QuickBooks in 15 minutes. Unfortunately, that's what we have online classes for. So, at any rate, there are different ways of entering things in estimates, but the whole idea is that what you want to do is be sure that you're using items. And at the bottom of the screen, you're going to see totals and so on for each of those items. Keep that in mind. Big word we want to keep using here again. Tiny word with big implications. So what are items? You're seeing a picture of what an item in QuickBooks is going to look like for you. Okay, you'll see an item name or number. You'll see that this is sitting as a sub item or part of a bigger group of items. We've got description. We've got down where it says cost, there might be a default cost. Usually we leave that at 0 because in the construction industry, as you buy things from vendors, you're paying different amounts as you go. So you'll drop that in. We've got a cost account that things are tied into, and an income account if you were using the same item for invoicing. So basically, items are customizable building blocks that are linked to accounts. This is all controllable by you. So I like to work in service items. Generally in construction, we use service items so that we can have a lot of control over the way the report is laid out. And in your service item, remember I said you could link things. I'm going to again show you right here. We can, if we have what's called a double-sided item, we can say if we're buying using a bill, a check, or a credit card, we're going to put that information to one particular account. But if we're using that same line item on an invoice, we can put it into income. Or you could just link everything to a single account. And I mean, there are a lot of little tricks on how to set these up properly, but that's generally the idea behind it, is that we have customizable building blocks. And of course, the other thing is you can decide on the item name and number and account linking. So that report that I showed you a little bit earlier, those items that are laid in there can be customized to meet your particular needs. Now, normally we like to lay those out in job stage order, but so that you can see a report that's kind of progressive in nature. But you can change or have the items be named and grouped however you would like to. So how do we arrange those? Well, for construction companies, we like to use specific job stages, usually in job progress order. And you decide not only how are they named, okay, but how are they organized. You can set up header titles. So for instance, you might have a header title for Windows, and then you have sub items for labor, materials, subs, and so on. You could have another one for doors. Underneath that, you could have labor if you have internal employees working on doors, materials, subs, so on. So again, customizable to the way you do things. This is what creates your detailed job reports. QuickBooks is a very list-driven system, and on the screen you'll see those headers and sub-items that I was talking about. See the windows and the doors. So windows, sub-items, doors over here. So, I mean, it's not gorgeous, but you know what? It's going to give you the reports that you need. Okay, so why they're so important. Okay, now this one is a variation on the previous earlier report where we saw estimate versus actual. This one is just showing, if even if you didn't put estimates in, this one is just showing cost and revenue. So if you didn't even put an estimate in, you're going to be able to get this type of report out of the system. And the thing is that QuickBooks does require items. If you're going to put an estimate in, you have to use items or purchase orders or invoices. items are critical to job costing in QuickBooks. So you can use items on your bills, checks, and credit card purchases, but there are a few transactions you can't use them on, and that's deposits or journal entries. So again, part of the tricks and tips on how to work inside QuickBooks, there are certain places where you can do certain aspects of job costing. In other cases, you can't. So deposits or journal entries are not very helpful. Once in a while, we have to use them for other reasons, but not for job costing typically. For items, it's going to let us track our job related detail. For the kinds of information that you're seeing here, you wouldn't want to see this in your chart of accounts or in your standard company report. And I have seen lots of people that do put all their job stages out in their standard company reports. Well, that's not standard accounting methodology. Not that that you can't get by with it. It's just not what your bankers want to see, not what your tax accountant wants to see. We want to keep that chart of accounts fairly straightforward, fairly simple for your company-wide reports. And you, as a company owner or someone managing in the company or needing to track job costs, would like to see things at this level of detail. Now, these are just sample, okay? Look at the format, not the dollars particularly, but you can see that these are samples of how that information would format out. And of course, for your company, it would look like you wanted it to look. Okay, so in order to see those detailed job cost reports that we were going for, to see those actual costs, remember I said you could use items on bills, checks, and credit cards? Well, here's an example of an item being used. There's a separate tab down at the bottom of bills, checks, and credit cards where you can enter items from your item list. So we talked about the item list. Now when you're getting ready to put something into the system, you just access that item list, put the right thing in, add in the cost, and you'll assign over here the customer job. In this case, it was to a spec home, okay, and the amount and so on. So it's very user friendly. We don't have to do double sets of entries or anything. We just pick out the right item, the item posts to the proper account, and then we get to see both item-based reports, okay, detailed reports by job, or we can see company-based reports, and in this case, this happens to be a contracted item, which will go to the contracted services account. Okay, so what we've done so far is we've gone through how necessary it is. The process within QuickBooks is to create those items for you. Within QuickBooks, you can use those items to put your estimates in place. And then you're going to see steps 3 and 4 with question marks. Well, I'm going to go back to that in a little bit. Okay, so we've also seen, if we kind of skip past 3 and 4, we've seen that you can create your costs in QuickBooks, how you record those using items, and you've seen how we can get estimate versus actual reports. So what are steps 3 and 4 all about? That's what we're going to look at here next. So let's talk about never enter data twice. I'm going to call it magic. Okay, and there's a way in QuickBooks that you can just click on your estimate. You can create the items that you want to go on a purchase order. We call it NED 2. Okay, my standard line is I want this on a t-shirt. It says never enter data twice. Gosh, don't we get tired of putting all the same things in over and over again if you're sitting there doing data entry? Well, this is a way to avoid that. You get your estimate in the system. You get your job phases. Remember, we talked about those job phases under, maybe this is windows and this is doors. Okay. On the left, from our estimate, there is a spot where we can just click and say, I want to select particular items and throw that onto a purchase order. And in which case, we could select particular items, and you see an example over here where we've got things going on our purchase orders, and you just select different purchase orders related to different vendors. Now, some people say, no, I don't want to send all those purchase orders out. It's going to take me a lot of extra time. Well, clicking does not take a whole lot of time, and you're going to see some additional advantages. Secondly, you don't have to send these purchase orders out if you don't want to. If you only use them to help make your life easier in QuickBooks, that's okay. So, first of all, why would we want to use them? Speed. So, your estimates copy, we already talked about that, directly onto purchase orders. But what you haven't seen yet is that our purchase orders copy directly into our bills, checks, or credit card entries. So, if you're doing the data entry, you don't have to figure out we get a bill from a certain vendor. Well, what part of the job was this for? Because I want to get the estimate versus actual lined up. Gosh, I don't know which part of the job is the lumber for the deck or is the lumber for the framing. You don't have to worry about that. You don't have to worry about what job it was for. We can just push that information or pull that information off the purchase order so you don't have to track things down. Secondly, accuracy. What will happen is this comes in, it's going to help you copy things into the right job. That's the second bullet. You're going to get everything in a much more accurate manner, but if you back up a little bit, if you're actually using purchase orders, it's going to help you document your purchasing details and help make sure that you have a clear understanding with, and it says your trades, but your material suppliers, your trades, anybody that is you're purchasing from. And the third thing is of course you've got control and dollar savings. So everything just copies into QuickBooks. You can immediately see if things don't match, and that will give you a spot where you can stop and figure out what's going on. Are we getting overbilled? Is there a duplicate billing? Maybe this is a good bill, but there's an unrecorded change order we need to get back into and take care of. So if you can resolve those kinds of things before the payment is done, it's going to prevent a lot of after the fact time and aggravation. On kind of a preventive basis, we want to prevent the wrong things from happening. And it's also kind of what we call a detective control because we can detect that there's something that might happen. So preventive and detective sides are getting taken care of at the same time. So you'll see this, it just copies things right into that items tab that we saw before. And so now we filled in steps 3 and step 4 where we see we create our estimates. We go down to step 3, we convert our estimates into purchase orders. Then when we receive the bill, we convert that from the purchase order directly into our bills, checks, and credit cards, which means our costs are properly and accurately recorded in QuickBooks, which lets us get to the estimate versus actual reports. So this little scheme that I'm showing you here isn't quite complete yet, and that's my cue to transition over to Luis. Luis, I'm going to go over and make you the presenter.
Great, thank you.
Okay, now you have to say, show your screen. All right, we've got it.
Perfect. Okay, so Diane was talking to you about using information that you already have inside of QuickBooks. What she calls the NED magic, never enter data twice. So we're going to apply kind of that same methodology here to the lien waiver and payment side of things. So when I first started in the construction industry, I really had no idea what a lien waiver was. It looked official, appeared to have some legal terminology on it, and really the pain point was that this entire process of the lien waiver and payment exchange was just taking tons and tons of hours for myself and the accounting staff, sending them out, collecting them, tracking them on the back end. I really looked around the industry to try to find a solution that worked with QuickBooks. That's what we used. And I couldn't find one. Little did I know on top of that, the lien waiver is actually one of the most powerful documents in construction. And it's a lot more complex than I thought. And for a lot of the reasons here on this slide, there's different types. There's unconditional, conditional, partial, final, and a mixture of some. You may be working on projects in different states that require different waivers. Some states have mandatory lien waivers that you have to use. Some owners want you to use particular lien waivers on a project. So you could see that you may have multiple lien waivers that you're dealing with in your company. And then a big one is in certain areas of the country, they're collecting downstream waivers, which is not necessarily the person that the general contractor pays, but all the other people downstream from that. So they're trying to collect essentially all waivers that are exchanged on a particular project. And then there's, of course, it's a legal document. So it has legal language that you have to look at closely to make sure you understand what you're doing. And then, and last and most important in this particular webinar is, you have to process all this stuff outside of QuickBooks, right? So QuickBooks has as Diane showed, great job costing functionality, but really it does lack in how do we send out lien waivers and payments after you've entered everything in. So taking a look at how documents and money is moved around at a high level, this is a common flow of how information, documents, and payments get exchanged on a construction project. And so as you can see here, there's a lot of moving pieces when trying to handle this exchange, and you're using multiple methods of communication. So you're using accounting software to enter in bills and invoices. You may be taking that information out of the accounting software and putting it in spreadsheets or using Word documents. And then you could be using email to communicate this information around with attachment. So when I was a controller at Midwest Regional Construction Company, this chart kind of describes a typical flow of those documents. And so if we kind of start out on the left-hand side here, our subs, vendors, and suppliers are doing work on the project. They're providing materials on a project. After a month or so, they're submitting an invoice over to the builder, and the builder's taking that invoice. They're inspecting the work, making sure everything looks okay, making sure materials are on site. They're approving that, and then they're asking either the lender or the property owner for money on that project in order to funnel that money back down to the left-hand side, to get it back down to the subs, vendors, and suppliers. And so if you really kind of take a look at this process, the problem is this can take a considerable amount of time for these documents and payments to make it all the way up and down this approval chain, okay? So if you think about work on the left-hand side, the work being done, or the subcontractors supplying materials, they're doing that, and maybe at the end of the month they're issuing an invoice, and so there's 30 days right there, right? And so then it goes to the builder, which they're approving and inspecting, and there might be another 30 days in there for them to do that. And then when they go to get the money from the lender or the property owner, you could be looking at another 15 days. And so this was pretty typical for the role that I was in, what the timeline looked like. So if you think about that, there's 75 days from when the work actually was done to all the documents, lien waivers, payments, everything else, making it all the way up and down this chain. Collecting and updating all this data, becomes an issue. So how do we just take the specific lien waiver and payment piece, right, that process, and make it more automatic in real time? If you think about QuickBooks, right, when you're in QuickBooks, you can have multiple users logged in. You can be collaborating in real time on the accounting side of things, entering bills and invoices and all kinds of stuff. But once it comes time to cut the check, that collaboration kind of stops and it turns into a one-way communication. So if you think about getting your check, getting your lien waiver prepared, putting those together, sending them out via mail, and then you're waiting for documents to come back, checks to get cash, and things like that. And so that collaboration kind of, it halts at that point. One thing you can do to speed up your document exchange, right, is using things like electronic signatures or electronic notarization. And if there's software out there, like the software that I was looking for, that could automatically track and organize this stuff as it comes back, that's just huge. And so same thing with sending and receiving money, electronic payments, right? Using things like ACH out there that you can electronically send money, and trying to eliminate these multiple check hops. The property owner sending the check to the builder, who cashes it and then sends another check to the subcontractor who cashes it, right? On and on and on. Those check hops really contribute to that day cycle of holding on to documents and payments. Like Diane mentioned, I'm going back to one of her slides here, the never enter data twice, right? The NED magic. Everything that you need for the lien waiver is inside QuickBooks, right? It's in that process of entering your estimate and then going to your PO, and then going to the bill entry, pulling all that information that's already in there through. So how can we use that information in QuickBooks, without re-entering it, to do the lien waiver process? What I'm going to show you is software. So this is something that was developed, right? This was something that I was looking for when I was the controller at the construction company. It works with QuickBooks. It uses information you already have to automatically fill out lien waivers. You can send them out for electronic signature, and then you can automatically track them when they come back. So I'm going to flip over here to the software. This is a we're talking about real-time collaboration, right? So this is a cloud-based software, it can be accessed anywhere with internet connection. And it's got the speed and reliability that you're looking for too. So here's a fresh, brand new account with lienwaivers.io, the company that I helped co-found. So you'll notice there's no information in this account yet, any kind of projects or subcontractors. The reason why that is we're going to use information that's in QuickBooks to populate this page, okay? If you can imagine in your QuickBooks process, you have invoices coming in every month, right? You're approving invoices, you're entering them into the accounting system, and you are getting to the point where you're ready to cut checks. And you go ahead and cut your checks, and then you're going to pull a report that's called a check details report. And so this report shows all the checks that you just cut. And at this point is where we kind of step in to facilitate all of the lien waiver stuff and the payment stuff, right? And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to bring in some sample information from QuickBooks, which is that check details report that I was just referencing. So let's pull that in. So here's a sample check details report. I'm going to pull into the system here. And as you'll start to see, it's going to start to populate lien waivers, okay? And right there, in my old role, this would take us a long time. This is about 50 or so lien waivers, right? So this would take a considerable amount of time to fill out each one of these by hand, so right there, like, how awesome is that? Like, you bring in your check details report from QuickBooks, it's got all the information, right? You drop it right in, and here we go. So I want to show you an example of what the lien waiver looks like, and this is where I was talking about, you may have multiple states, you may have different owners that require different lien waiver templates, different contractors, right? So you can pick and choose what lien waiver that you want to use depending on the project or depending on the state. And so everything that you can kind of see in bold here is things that came in from QuickBooks, okay? So this was just a standard lien waiver template that we have in our system. We used the QuickBooks information and populated all of this information, invoice through dates, the subcontractor down here, any invoice numbers that are related to that, and line items or cost codes that Diane was speaking of also can come into the lien waiver as well. And now if we go back here and see that we have some delivery options, right? You can print all these out. You can, over here on the left, you can download all these as a PDF, right? If you are still sending them out via paper, easily generated, you can download them all. We have an option to send these here for email. So this includes the unsigned document in an email attachment and sends that out to the recipient. And then, the piece that I was kind of talking to in the presentation was, how about utilizing something like electronic signatures in the process? And so I'm going to show you how this works in the electronic signature world. This is an electronic notarization option I won't worry about right now. And then also electronic payment, we do have the ability to do that, but let's focus right now on generating lien waivers and sending these out electronically, okay? So I selected this particular lien waiver here. You can see you could select any and all of these that are shown, but I'm just, for this example, just selecting this one, and I'm gonna go ahead and deliver that. So what happens here is this, lien waiver is being delivered to that recipient. They're gonna get a notification in their inbox, which I'll show you here shortly. But what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna flip back to the dashboard where we started, where we had no information in there, right? So now that we brought information in through QuickBooks, we've populated this dashboard. So we have 50 unsigned lien waivers representing this amount of dollars in payments, right? And there's some other nice metrics on here for you to look at. And then if I go to this particular subcontractor and I expand this, there are all the lien waivers that are for that particular subcontractor are organized here. And so as you can see, this was the particular lien waiver that we just sent. And so it's showing that it's awaiting signature. So now if I flip over to my email here, in flipping over to my email, I'm acting as the recipient. So I could be the subcontractor, I could be the vendor, the supplier. I'm receiving the lien waiver ready to sign, okay? And as you can see, it also sent a W-9. So we could collect the W-9 also. I'm gonna click into the lien waiver, and it's gonna explain to me here, with the information you use in QuickBooks, it's pulling things like the address and the name of the subcontractor, and it quickly explains how everything's going to work. I'm going to show you. I'm going to click review and sign here. Now you can sign these via email on your desktop computer or through your smartphone. So this works on your smartphone. So the roofer on his lunch break can pull up his phone, look at his email, see he has lien waivers to sign. As you can see, here's the one that we looked at before. The roofer can click in here. They can draw their signature in. They can type it in, just kind of standard electronic signature things here. So I'm going to put this in here, put my name in, and on this particular lien waiver, a title. And if everything looks okay on my end from American Roofing standpoint, I'd say, okay, let's go ahead and continue. And I'm going to agree to be, legally bound by this, legal lien waiver document. And great, right here, your check's in the mail is what it says. And so now if I flip back to the dashboard here, and I'm going to give this a quick refresh, that we're going to show in the dashboard here that this is that tracking part that I was talking about, right? So as you can see now, the dashboard updated. It's showing that we delivered a lien waiver, and now we have a signed lien waiver. So if I click on this and I pull up that lien waiver we looked at before, it's going to show that signed copy that we just did, along with an audit trail, showing where it came from and who it went to. And so after this is signed, the general contractor, or the person sending the lien waiver standpoint, right, they're getting that signed copy back here in their dashboard. The person who signed the lien waiver, so the subcontractor, vendor, or supplier, they're receiving in their email a copy of that signed lien waiver, okay? So that is a very quick kind of synopsis of, how to exchange lien waivers with QuickBooks, right? How to utilize some of those things that I was talking about in things like electronic signatures to speed up that payment and lien waiver cycle of the 30 days, the 30 days, the 15 days, right? And to really be able to make that process just a lot better. Kind of closing the loop here on Diane's first steps. Maybe I'll fire it back to Diane, and we'll kind of close this loop here on how the information moved in and out of QuickBooks to complete this process.
Okay, so just to recap, Louise, that was pretty awesome. Okay, how to make that whole process much less painful and a whole lot faster. So, just to recap what I'd covered, tying everything together is we create our items in QuickBooks, we get our QuickBooks estimates in place, we convert our estimates into POs. And again, you saw on the front end that you don't have to use the POs, but how much it helps. If you use the POs, you can go into 3 and 4, where our POs then convert into bills, checks, and credit cards. If you don't want to use that, you can go straight from 2 to 5. It's just more work. Okay. Um, and just a little side note, I like to say entering your POs in is kind of like entering your bills ahead of time, if that makes any sense. So, okay, so then your costs get recorded in QuickBooks, and we create the estimate versus actual reports. And then Louise covered how do you exchange those lien waivers very quickly, securely. Everything is happening as quickly as people can actually respond. And using those online signature pieces, it really makes a difference. And then getting your payments made or received right away, and then collecting, tracking, and keeping all of your documents organized. And I don't know about you guys, but I have walked into some construction offices where The paper was floating everywhere. That'll be the best way I could say it. And keeping all that stuff organized inside on paper, inside of an organization, can sometimes be a real challenge for folks. So, Louise, you want to add anything more into that?
Yeah, I think that, we see a lot of time, we see the construction industry moving more and more towards paperless things, right? They have project management systems that are using, online blueprints and contracts being exchanged electronically and a lot of things stored electronically, right? And so really trying to round out the entire process with the stuff that happens after the work's done, exchanging lien waivers and payments, and then collecting, tracking, and organizing all those documents, is something that the industry, I think, is looking for and needs, and this provides a great solution to do that.
It's very cool from the standpoint of that you saw a problem and you figured out, as you said, you went out and looked. And when answers aren't there, I found the same thing on my side. Some of the things we've developed is that we went out and looked for pre existing solutions. And when you can't find them, then sometimes you have to develop it yourself. So that's what you did. So thanks so much. I'm going to just recap kind of from my side some of the things that we do have available, and then we can go into Q&A. So if you guys have questions, this is a good time to be maybe typing those in so that Luis and I can address those as we wrap up here. But since we're sponsoring this webinar with some good information, then we are going to take just a moment or two to do our little commercial at the end. So we have at InfoPlus Accounting, as many of you probably know, or those of you who haven't visited us yet, if you go to buildyournumbers.com, there are a whole boatload of free things that you can get out there. We have a free self-assessment on your profitability management tools. If you go out there, you can take that quiz and get a score that's sent back to you so that you can see it's a whole list and kind of you can self-assess where you are in the process. We have an employee labor cost and burden calculator. There's a free version of that, and of course there are paid versions as well. We have month-end closing procedures all set up ahead of time. This can help you make sure your books are accurate every month. We have a pre-built construction template in QuickBooks for those of you who are feeling like maybe your system is not what it should be. You can go out and take a look at that. I always tell people, even if you're not interested in the product, if you go out and watch the videos that go with that, you're going to learn a lot about QuickBooks and job costing. Our cost of chaos analyzer, if you go through that, most companies will find holes, cracks worth up to 60 to 100,000 that they're losing in profits because there's certain pieces and parts not in place in their business. We do have that Construction Industry Success Summit that I mentioned Luis spoke at. We've got 20 industry consultants. There's something like 23 hours of really great insights from construction consultants. And I think you'd like that. You'll find that on the site in our Construction Accounting and Management program. This is our program with online QuickBooks desktop job cost training. Okay, and this is where we have lots of handouts. We've got online videos. You can take a look at that. So also, if you use QuickBooks, I assume most of you do, when it's time for you to update or upgrade, get in touch with us because on Pro and Premier we offer a minimum of 35% off of the standard pricing. And for Enterprise, we have some pretty significant discounts. They're lifetime discounts, actually. So if you're thinking about that it's time to move up, get in touch with us. So there's an email for you to get in touch with and a phone number. So thank you for listening to my little quote unquote commercial, just to let you know that we have these things available for you. Okay. Oh, and lots of blog articles, I didn't tell you, that are very educational. So designed to be that way. Okay. Luis, I'll let you talk about Lien Waivers IO.
Yeah, so I just put a few links here for additional information for people that are looking for, QuickBooks solutions and how things kind of work and how other people have been using those. And so you'll see a few links there. The first one really is, I think they were probably one of our first customers, and we really went back and tried to figure out, how much time were they actually saving with this whole using the software, implementing everything. And really the first time that we sent out a batch of lien waivers for that customer, the accountant sat back in her chair and she said, I just got my entire afternoon back. That's kind of, there's a few tips and tricks in there also for QuickBooks from QuickBooks experts. I believe Diane is also in that little article too. So that's a good one to read. And then we have a savings calculator that you can actually just punch in a few different things and kind of see, how much time and money you'd actually be saving with electronic processes. And then the fourth bullet, the last bullet point there is if you want to get started, if you want to ask other questions about how it works, you can click that link right there, which will get, I think Diane's going to get out the copies of the slides and things. That will take you right to us. And then also I put down at the bottom a phone number and our Lien Waivers email address in case you want to reach out to contact us with other questions that you have.
Okay, thank you, Luis. And yes, we will get the slides out to you, I'd say sometime in the next 24 hours. This is Thursday, so give us a little bit of time to get everybody's emails loaded in and emailed out to you. And all of those links in there are clickable, so you don't have to worry about how to get to those places. The links in the PDF will be clickable for you. So a few questions, a couple of them I did answer out in the Q&A screen. So I'm going to start with the ones that we didn't touch. So one of them is James is asking, Luis, do you integrate with any third-party apps that connect with QuickBooks like Notify?
Yes, we do, and we are working on integrations all the time. There's lots of great accounting software out there. There's lots of great project management tools that are out there, and we are working on integrations all the time. One of them that we haven't got to yet is Notify, but we do know of Notify, and so yeah, we do have, depending on the case, we can make things like that happen for sure.
Oh, there are only a few hundred plugins out there. So, I know we get questions about plugins regularly, and we'll look at individual ones with folks, but yeah, there are a lot of them being developed. So, but I know Notify is one of the big ones out there that works with QBO. And of course, one of the questions that we had was, does Lien Waivers work with QBO?
Yes, and Lien
Okay.
Waivers does work with QBO just as easy as it did there with QuickBooks Desktop.
And I think you mentioned Zero. I think it also works with. Okay.
That's right. We do have a Zero integration. It's really smooth, and the process that you saw there is very similar to the Zero process as well.
Okay. Good. Okay, so Julie asked, do you have more information about breaking down labor cost in QuickBooks? Julie, yes, the answer is that first of all, you can job cost labor in QuickBooks by using the module. It's actually a free module in QuickBooks, their payroll module. However, if you want tax tables and so on, there is a fee. And there are several different payroll services that we can use to get payroll and payroll taxes job costed in QuickBooks. That said, just getting payroll and payroll taxes is not, those aren't all the cost that really are associated with having employees work on jobs. And for that reason, we developed our employee cost and labor burden calculator. And in it, we show you how to not only compute what each one of your employees really costs you per hour that they're working for you, but also how to get those costs assigned or allocated out to jobs automatically. So you may want to take a look at that. Watch the videos. It'll give you a lot more understanding of labor costs and how QuickBooks works with them. Let's see. Okay, so I'm looking at, somebody wants to know, do you integrate with Jobber, Luis?
Currently, no,
Okay.
but like I said, we are integrating with things all the time, and we have a lot of those different ones on our radar for sure.
Okay, so you guys can circulate a petition to send it over to Luis as to which one you want them to do next. Okay, let's see. I'm looking through these. Sandy has had some, questions about very specific QuickBooks questions, Sandy, if you want to contact me offline, I'd be happy to spend a few minutes and we can talk about, what you're getting. It's kind of hard to come up with all the answers quickly in a seminar like this. So, okay, so I'm watching for any other questions. A few things I had already answered, I think had to do with the recording, with the slides. Other than that, I think we actually got done a few minutes early. We talked about how long we said we should take for this, and I said, well, put down 60 minutes, and if we get done early, people will be happy. So you guys all just gained 6 minutes in your workday. So that's compliments of Luis and Diane. So,
Hey, Diane, I see one more question out there I can answer real quick from
oh,
Sue. It
okay, okay.
says, can the waivers be sorted by job and tracked that way? And yes, they can. I didn't show that, but you can flip between sorting those by job. So you'd have all the waivers sorted by job, or they can sort by subcontractor, vendor, supplier, like I showed in the demo.
Okay, terrific. Last question. Will there be a recording of this available? Yes, it is scheduled for a week from today. Each of you will get an email and you'll be able to watch the recording. Okay? Okay, well, now we're down to giving you 5 minutes back. So thanks everybody for taking time out of the middle of your day to be with us. We hope you found a lot of great information in here and that you can find good ways to use it in your business. And of course, both of us are here as a resource for you. So thanks so much, and we will wrap. Take care, everybody. Oh, and I'm seeing lots of thank yous, Luis. Okay, that's
Thank
always
you. Thanks
fun.
for having me, and this has been great.
Okay, take care, everybody. Bye bye.